The bell above the diner door jingled every time someone entered, but Eliza hardly noticed it anymore. It was part of the background music of her life, like the soft clinking of plates, the low hum of conversation, and the occasional hiss of the coffee machine behind her. She moved with the rhythm of it all, pouring coffee, balancing trays, smiling on cue. Her apron was always a little wrinkled, her shoes always a little sore, and her back always a little stiff by the end of each day. But she kept working, day after day, without complaining. People came and went. Some were kind, some were tired. Some were rude without even realizing it. Elise had seen them all, served them all, and forgotten most of them. Nobody really noticed her much either. Just another waitress at Millie's diner. Her name tag simply "Read Eliza," printed in faded black letters. Few regulars knew her name. Some liked her for her calm attitude and never-ending patience, but to most she was invisible. That was fine with her. She didn't talk much about herself. If someone asked, she'd smile and say she lived nearby, had been working here for a while, and liked the quiet life. Nobody asked beyond that. No one knew about the piano in her small apartment. No one knew she played every night, after work, after the tiredness in her legs had settled. It was an old upright piano, slightly out of tune, with a few sticky keys. But to her, it was a friend, a partner, a voice. The piano had come from her mother, who had once dreamed of being a concert pianist. Life had not been kind. Eliza's father had left when she was a child, and her mother worked long hours cleaning hotel rooms. When Elisa was 13, her mother bought the piano secondhand from a church that no longer needed it. She didn't have the strength or time to teach Eliza properly, but she always encouraged her to sit and play. "Find your own song," she used to say, "even if no one hears it." Eliza had no teacher, no formal training. She learned by ear, by watching videos at the local library, and by feeling. Her fingers explored the keys the way a child touches a new toy, curious, excited, unsure. Slowly, over the years, she taught herself to play. She began to write her own melodies, simple at first, then more complex. She would never say she was a genius, or even talented, but something inside her felt alive only when her hands were on the keys. Her music was full of the things she never said out loud. Loud, longing, and the small joys that life sometimes gave her. When her mother got sick, Eliza was in her early 20s. She dropped out of college to take care of her. She never told anyone what she had planned to study music, of course, but that dream was packed away like old clothes in a suitcase. Her mother's illness was slow, painful, and full of difficult nights. Eliza worked at the diner during the day and cared for her mother in the evenings. She played the piano quietly, trying not to wake her mother, yet hoping the music somehow helped. Sometimes her mother would smile faintly and say, "I hear you. It's beautiful." After her mother passed away, Elisa found herself alone. There were no siblings, no close friends, no family left. The piano remained, and so did the music. It became her comfort, her secret world. She never played in public. She didn't even tell her coworkers. Some of them knew she liked music, but most assumed she was just another woman getting through. Life one shift at a time. She was content with that image. The diner was a simple place. Red booths, a long counter, black and white floor tiles. There was a piano in the corner, mostly ignored. It hadn't been tuned in years. It was more decoration than instrument. Some thought it added charm. Nobody played it. Occasionally a child would press a few keys before a parent pulled them away. Most people barely noticed it. Eliza noticed it every day. She would glance at it as she walked by, a small ache forming in her chest. She had thought about playing it once or twice, late at night when the diner was empty, but fear held her back. What if someone laughed? What if she wasn't good enough? She was just a waitress. What right did she have to sit and play? But at night, in her apartment, she would play like the world was listening. She had written several pieces over the years. One of them was special to her. It didn't have a name. It had started as a slow melody on a rainy night and had grown, over time, into something deeper, something full of emotion she couldn't explain. She had never written it down. She didn't need to. It was etched into her fingers, into her heart. One evening, as the sun was setting and the last golden light filled the diner windows, a group of customers came in, loud and laughing. They had clearly been drinking and were looking to keep the fun going. Eliza served them with a polite smile, though their jokes were crude and their laughter sharp. One of the men pointed at the piano and said loudly, "Hey, does that thing actually work? Or is it just for decoration?" The manager, wiping down the counter, chuckled and said, "No one's played it in years." Another waitress, trying to be funny, added, "Eliza plays. Don't you, Eliza?" Eliza froze for a second. Her heart skipped. She forced a laugh and waved it off. Just a little at home. But the man latched onto it. "Oh, really? What a surprise. Come on then. Show us. Play something." Eliza shook her head. "No, I don't play in public." The man leaned back in his chair. "Ah, come on. You afraid?" "What if you're actually good? We'll be the judge." His friends laughed, and one of them said, "Bet she can't even play Happy Birthday." The teasing stung. But not because it was cruel, it stung, because it touched something Eliza kept hidden so carefully. She felt exposed, like they had peeled away a layer of her soul. She tried to ignore it, but the man pulled out a $100 bill and waved it in the air. "Tell you what, you play something decent, anything that doesn't make my ears bleed. Lee's $100 tip?" Eliza looked at the bill, then at the piano. Her hands were trembling slightly. The manager chuckled awkwardly and said, "You don't have to, Eliza." But something had shifted inside her, a quiet burning feeling. Years of silence. Years of hiding. Maybe she was tired. Maybe it was just time. Without speaking, she untied her apron, walked slowly to the piano, and sat down. The room grew quiet, some people curious, some surprised. Even the noisy group leaned in, half expecting a joke. Eliza placed her fingers on the keys. She closed her eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. The noise of the diner faded. In her mind, she was home, in her dim apartment, alone with her music. Then, she began to play. The first notes were soft, almost unsure, a gentle melody, like a whisper. But as her fingers moved, confidence followed. The notes flowed like water, telling a story with no words. People stopped eating. Conversations ended. Forks were lowered. The entire diner fell into silence. Music filled the room, wrapping around the people like a blanket of emotion. Some heard sadness, some heard beauty. Some felt memories they didn't even know they had rising to the surface. Eliza wasn't trying to impress anyone. She was simply letting the music speak. By the time she reached the middle of the piece, her hands were flying across the keys, her face calm but focused. She played like someone who had nothing to prove but everything to say. When the final note faded, there was a long silence. Then applause. Real, loud, heartfelt applause. Dave, the man who had mocked her, stood up and clapped. Someone had recorded the whole thing on their phone. Eliza looked down, suddenly shy again. She stood up, nodded politely, and walked back to the counter. Hands were still shaking. The $100 was left on the table. But something far more valuable had been left behind as well. Something Eliza didn't fully understand yet. Her song had been heard. Her voice had been felt. She had finally played for the world, and the world had listened. The next morning, everything felt the same, but it wasn't. Eliza woke up at her usual time, made a cup of tea, and sat quietly by her window. The sun peeked in through the curtains, birds chirped like always, and the neighborhood was still. Asleep, but her mind was restless. The memory of the night before played again and again in her head, her walking to the piano, placing her hands on the keys, and playing her most personal song in front of a crowd of strangers. She had barely slept. Not because she was upset, but because it had been the first time she had ever truly been seen at the diner. Things seemed normal at first. The kitchen clattered, customers came and went, and the manager gave out the morning assignments. There were whispers. Few of her coworkers looked at her differently. One of the younger waitresses smiled and said, "You were amazing last night." Another one joked, Didn't know we had a superstar hiding in the apron. Eliza blushed and tried to laugh it off. It was just a song, she said softly. But deep down, something in her had shifted. That same group of rowdy customers from the night before didn't return. But the piano had changed. People looked at it now. They mentioned it. Is this the one she played? They asked. One man even came in with his daughter and said, "We saw that video online. Was that really her?" Liza paused. What video? The man pulled out. His phone opened a video app and showed her.
Oh.
The video was shaky, taken from a booth in the diner. It was clearly her. It captured the entire moment, her walking to the piano, playing her piece, and the crowd going silent. The caption read, "Waitress stuns diner with beautiful piano performance." It already had thousands of views. By the end of the day, it had more than 100,000. Eliza's heart thumped in her chest. She wasn't angry, but she wasn't sure how to feel. She had never asked for this. She never wanted to be famous. Music had always been her secret, her comfort. Now it was out in the open. Over the next few days, the video spread like wildfire. It was shared on social media, reposted by music pages, and even discussed on a local news channel. A journalist called the diner and asked for an interview with the waitress pianist. Blogger wrote a short article titled, "Hidden Genius at a Diner Piano." Liza didn't respond to any requests. She just kept showing up for work, pretending everything was the same. But things were changing fast. Customers began coming in just to see her. Some asked her to play again. Some told her they cried when they heard her music. It's an elderly couple. Said the piece reminded them of the song they danced to on their wedding night. A young man said it inspired him to finally pick up his old guitar. Teacher asked if she would consider performing at a local school music event. Eliza didn't know how to say no, but she also didn't know how to say yes. She had spent her whole life avoiding attention. She felt like she was in the center of a spotlight she never asked for. Her manager was supportive, though confused. "You've been working here for years, Eliza," he said one morning. "Why? Didn't you ever tell us you could play like that?" She just smiled and said, "I wasn't ready." That answer was true. Even now, she didn't feel ready. Her coworkers were a mix of impressed and jealous. One girl, who had always been distant, said under her breath, "I guess anyone can go viral these days." Another rolled her eyes when someone brought up the video. Liza tried not to let it get to her, but it stung. She wasn't trying to be better than anyone. She had just played one song. That weekend, she got a message on her phone from someone named Michael. He introduced himself as a local music teacher and said he had seen the video. He asked if she had ever considered recording her music or performing in front of a bigger audience. He offered to help, no pressure, no contract, just a conversation. Eliza stared at the message for a long time. Then she put the phone down. That night, as usual, she sat at her old piano. She played the same piece she had played in the diner, but this time her hands hesitated. It felt different now. She was nervous. What if it wasn't as good as people thought? What if she couldn't play like that again? She stopped halfway through the song and rested her hands on her lap. Her fingers felt heavy. Her heart was confused. For the first time in years, the piano didn't feel like a safe place. The next day, one of the customers who had recorded the video returned to the diner. He came up to her quietly and said, "I hope it's okay that I posted that video. I didn't expect it to blow up, but it really touched people. I just wanted to say thank you." Liza smiled gently. "It's okay. I'm just surprised." Nodded and left, but his words stuck with her. Touched people. She thought about that. She had never imagined her music reaching anyone beyond her own walls. She had always believed that real musicians were the ones on stage, with formal training, expensive instruments, and shiny careers. She was just someone who played in secret, who worked at a diner, who lived alone. But people were listening. They were feeling something. Later that week, a local radio station invited her to come in for an interview. Then she changed her mind. When she arrived at the station, she wore her best clothes, a simple sweater and jeans, but clean and neat. Her hands trembled slightly as she waited in the lobby. The host greeted her warmly and asked simple questions. Where did she learn to play? Hadn't she shared her music before? Eliza answered honestly. I was scared. I thought I wasn't good enough. The host smiled and said, "The world disagrees." After the interview aired, more people reached out. A small record label emailed her asking if she had more songs. A concert organizer wanted her to join a local composer's showcase. A piano store offered her a brand new digital keyboard. Eliza felt like she was being swept into a river she didn't know how to swim in. She sat at home that night, surrounded by letters, emails, and text messages. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Her mind was full of doubt. What if this was all a mistake? What if the people who liked her music were wrong? What if the people who didn't were right? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. She opened it and found her elderly neighbor standing there, holding a tray of cookies. "I just wanted to say," the woman said, "I saw the video. I didn't know you played. That song, it reminded me of my sister. She passed away last year. When I heard your music, I felt like she was in the room. Thank you." Eliza felt tears sting her eyes. She nodded, speechless. After the woman left, Eliza went to her piano and sat down. This time, she didn't try to be perfect. She didn't worry about the world watching. She just closed her eyes and played for herself, for her mother, for the people who needed something to feel in. That moment, the music came back. It was still hers. It always had been. In the following days, she decided to take a small step forward. She messaged Michael, the music teacher, and agreed to meet. They sat at a quiet cafe and talked about her songs, her past, and what she wanted. "I'm not sure I want fame," she said. "I just want to share something real." Michael smiled. "That's the best kind of music. Honest. People can feel it." They agreed to record a few of her pieces, starting simply. No big studio. Just a clean piano, a microphone, and her hands. Eliza was still scared, but now she was also curious. As she walked home from that meeting, a breeze passed through the trees. The streets looked the same, but everything felt new. She wasn't sure what was coming. But she knew one thing for sure. She had finally found her voice, and the world was listening. A week passed, and the video that started it all continued to spread. At first, Eliza thought it would slow down, like most online moments do. But instead, it only grew bigger. Comments poured in from people all over the world, messages from strangers who said they cried listening to her song, people who shared their own stories of grief and hope, musicians who wanted to collaborate, and even children who said they wanted to learn piano because of her. Eliza read many of the messages. Late at night, curled up on her couch in her small apartment. Some made her smile, some made her cry, others scared her. They reminded her that she wasn't invisible anymore. Her coworkers at the diner looked at her differently now. Some were kind and proud. One older cook who never talked much gave her a quiet nod and said, "You've got a gift, girl." But not everyone was supportive. A few rolled their eyes when customers asked about her. One waitress whispered that Eliza was letting the fame get to her head. Though she hadn't changed anything, she still worked the same shifts, wore the same clothes, and kept her head down. The piano in the corner of the diner was now more than just decoration. People came in asking about it. Some took pictures with it. A reporter from a local magazine even visited and asked Eliza to pose beside it. She refused politely. It still felt strange to be treated like someone important, but change kept coming. One morning, Lisa received a message from a small but respected music label based in Chicago. The message was kind, professional, and full of praise. They said they had seen the video and were deeply moved. They asked if she had more original compositions. They offered to help her record them properly. There was no pressure. They only wanted to hear her music. Eliza felt frozen for a moment. She had written many pieces, but she had never shared them with anyone. They lived only in her mind and her fingers. She had never written them down, never played them for others. What if they weren't good enough? What if that one performance was just luck? That same day, Michael, the music teacher she had met at the cafe, sent her a message asking how she was doing. She replied honestly. "I'm overwhelmed," he replied. "Good. That means you care." She laughed at that, but the words stayed. With her, Michael invited her to a small recording studio in town. not a fancy one. It's just a quiet space in the back of a music school where local artists practiced. Eliza hesitated, but finally agreed. When she arrived, she was nervous. Her hands were cold, and her heart was racing. But Michael greeted her gently, gave her a cup of tea, and showed her the piano. It was grand, literally a real grand piano. Black and polished, with keys so smooth, it almost felt like touching glass. Eliza had never played anything so perfect before. "Just play what you feel," Michael said. "Don't think about the audience. Just think about the music." She sat, closed her eyes, and began. It started slow, like it always did. Her fingers remembered before her mind did. She played the piece from the diner again, but this time with more layers, more emotion, more detail. Then she played another piece she had never shared before, one she had written years ago during her mother's illness. It was sad but not hopeless. It spoke of pain but also of strength. Michael sat silently in the recording room, listening. When she finished, there was no applause, no crowd, just quiet. "That was incredible," he said softly through the speaker. Truly, Eliza didn't know what to say. She just smiled, her eyes misty. They recorded 3 pieces that day. Afterward, Michael offered to help her transcribe the music so it could be published properly. He also helped her send samples to the music label in Chicago. A week later, the label responded. They wanted to meet. Eliza felt like her world was spinning. She had spent years being invisible, and now people wanted to hear her. People wanted to help. People believed in her. But with the attention came pressure. Not everyone was kind. As her story spread, critics began to speak. A few music bloggers said the story was sweet but exaggerated. One called her an internet sensation, not a real artist. Another said her composition was simple, emotionally manipulative, and probably stolen. Eliza was shocked. Stolen. She had never copied a thing in her life. The idea that someone could think she had cheated crushed her. Worse still, a well-known music critic, famous for his harsh opinions, wrote a long article saying, "It is highly unlikely that a self-taught diner waitress with no formal training could compose something of such emotional complexity. Either she had outside help, or the piece was not truly hers." The article went viral. Some people defended her. Others doubted her. The internet buzzed with arguments. Her name trended again, but this time for the wrong reasons. Eliza shut off her phone and stayed home for 2 days. She didn't eat much. She didn't sleep. She didn't play. All the old feelings came back. The doubt, the fear, the belief that she wasn't good enough. That she didn't belong in the world of real musicians. Maybe they were right. Maybe that one moment in the diner had just been luck. On the 3rd day, there was a knock at her door. It was Michael. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at her, then handed her a folder. Inside were printouts of the sheet music they had worked on together, along with a list of names people who had messaged to say her music had helped them. "This is what's real," he said. "Not the comments, not the critics. This." She held the papers in her lap, silent. Her eyes welled up with tears. Michael added, "You don't have to prove anything to anyone. But if you still want to share your music, don't let them stop you." That night, Eliza sat at her piano and tried to play. Her fingers hesitated. She closed her eyes. She thought of her mother. She thought of the rainy nights when she played. Just to feel okay, she thought of the little girl in the diner who had clapped for her. She thought of the old woman who said the song reminded her of her sister. She began to play this time. She didn't play the piece from the diner. She played something new, something raw, a piece filled with confusion and strength, a piece about fear, yes, but also about courage. It poured out of her like rain from a heavy sky. When she finished, she opened her eyes. Her hands were shaking, but her heart was calm. A week later, she received another invitation, this time from a well-known concert hall in the city. They were hosting a showcase of new and unheard composers. It was a small event, but respected. They asked if she would be willing to perform her own piece live, Eliza read. The email 3 times. She didn't answer right away. She went to work at the diner. She served coffee. She cleared tables. She wiped the counter. but she kept thinking about it. That evening, she closed the register. One of the regular customers, a young girl about 10 years old, came up to her with a notebook. "I wrote a song," the girl said shyly. "Can you look at it?" Liza opened the notebook. The notes were messy, written in pencil, with simple rhythms. But it was beautiful, full of innocence and hope. "I want to play like you someday," the girl whispered. Eliza smiled. Her voice was gentle. "You already do." After the girl left, Eliza stood by the piano in the corner of the diner. She touched one of the keys. Just for a moment, it made a soft sound. That night, she wrote back to the concert hall. She said yes. She was scared. She wasn't sure what would happen, but she was ready. For the first time in her life, she chose to believe in herself, not because others did, but because her music had something to say, and this time she wouldn't stay silent. Here is part 4 of the true story, Waitress Compelled to Play Piano. Her masterpiece silences critics. Written in simple English, with an emotional and interesting tone, it flows in third-person narration and is approximately 2,500 words with no headings. After the concert, Eliza's life changed in ways she had never expected. Suddenly, the quiet waitress who had spent years hiding behind a counter was known by many as a talented pianist and composer. The video that had started it all was still online, but now it was shared with pride, with messages praising her courage and skill. Yet despite all the attention, Eliza remained humble and grounded. She knew that what mattered most wasn't fame or praise, but the music itself, how it touched people's hearts and gave them hope. Invitations arrived steadily. Local radio shows wanted interviews. Music festivals asked her to perform. Even television programs sent requests. Eliza accepted some and declined others. She wanted to control her journey, to move at a pace she felt comfortable with. It was important to her to keep the music pure, not a business or a show. One day, she received a letter from a prestigious orchestra in the city. They had listened to the recordings of her compositions and wanted to include her piece, the one she had played at the concert hall in their winter season. They invited her to attend the performance and speak about her music. Eliza was stunned. This was more than she had ever dreamed. She agreed, not sure if she felt ready, but knowing that she could not say no. The night of the orchestra's performance was magical. Eliza sat in the audience, her hands folded tightly in her lap. The grand concert hall was filled with music lovers dressed in their finest clothes. The orchestra began with classical pieces she knew well, but her heart beat fastest when it was her turn. When the conductor raised his baton, the first notes of her composition floated through the air. The sound was richer and fuller than she had ever heard it before, played by dozens of instruments, all working together. The melody she had once played alone on a small, old piano now soared and danced in the air. It was a moment of pure magic. People listened with rapt attention. Some closed their eyes, some smiled softly, and some wiped away tears. Eliza felt warmth spread through her chest. She realized that her music had grown beyond her small apartment and the diner. It had become something bigger, something that could connect many hearts at once. After the performance, the orchestra invited her. On stage, the audience rose to their feet, clapping and cheering. Eliza gave a small, shy bow, feeling a mix of pride and humility. She spoke softly about her journey, about how music had helped her through dark times, and how it had the power to heal and bring people together. Following this, Eliza began to receive invitations to teach. Many young people, especially those from poor or difficult backgrounds, wrote to her asking for lessons or advice. She remembered how music had once been her only friend, how it had given her a voice when she had none. So she started offering workshops at community centers, teaching basic piano and songwriting to anyone who wanted to learn. Her workshops were different from traditional music lessons. Eliza didn't care about perfect technique or theory at first. She wanted her students to feel music, to express themselves honestly, just as she had learned to do. Many of her students had never touched a piano before, but their faces lit up with excitement as they played their first notes. Eliza loved seeing their joy. It reminded her of the little moments that had kept her going, like the young girl in the diner who wanted to play like her. Teaching became a new passion, a way to give back and keep the music alive in others. Even with all the new opportunities, Eliza never forgot her roots. She continued to work part-time at the diner. It was her way of staying connected to the life she had known, to the simple moments that had shaped her. Sometimes when the diner was quiet, she would sit at the old piano in the corner and play, softly, just for herself. Some customers would stop and listen. Sometimes they clapped quietly when she finished. The diner became a little different too. People came not just for coffee and pie, but hoping to hear Eliza play. The old piano was tuned and cared for, no longer just decoration, but a symbol of hope and talent. The manager made sure it was ready whenever Eliza wanted to use it. There were still challenges. Some days, Eliza felt tired or overwhelmed. Some people still doubted her. The critics hadn't disappeared entirely, but she had learned to listen only to those who mattered, the people who loved her music and believed in her. She had found her strength in the truth of her songs. One chilly autumn morning, Lisa received a message from a famous documentary filmmaker. He wanted to tell her story, not just the viral video, but the whole journey, the years of quiet practice, the care for her mother, the fear, the doubts, and finally, the courage to play for the world. Eliza hesitated. She was not used to being in the spotlight, but she also saw the chance to inspire others, to show that talent can be hidden anywhere, that dreams can grow from the smallest seeds. She agreed. The filming took several months. Eliza invited the crew to her apartment, to the diner, to the music school where she taught. They filmed her playing, teaching, laughing, and sometimes quietly thinking. The documentary captured her warmth and her struggles, her music and her story. When the film was released, it was received with love and admiration. People from all walks of life saw Eliza's story and felt hope. They saw how an ordinary person who had faced hardship and fear could find courage and change her world through music. The documentary also helped Eliza reach new places. She was invited to speak at conferences, music festivals, and schools across the country. She met other musicians, artists, and dreamers who shared their stories and dreams. Each meeting gave her new energy and ideas. Through it all, Eliza remained grounded by the lessons she learned at the diner and from her mother. That music is not about fame or money, but about connection and feeling. That sometimes the quietest voices have the most to say. Years passed, and Eliza's music grew deeper and richer. She composed new pieces inspired by life's changes, joy, loss, love, and hope. Her piano became her voice in the world, and her story became a beacon for those who felt unseen. Looking back, Eliza often thought about that night in the diner, the night she was pushed, almost by accident, to play her song in front of strangers. But it had changed everything. It had opened a door she never knew was there. She realized that sometimes the hardest step is the first one, the step out of silence and fear into light and possibility. And once she had taken it, the music would never stop.